all my wool away. And it was strange. It was to celebrate the anniversary of the Battle of the Somme.
Right, okay.
Right? So
I'm
it's
trying
like,
to link the two
there's
together.
like heritage
Yeah.
commission opportunities, and it was like I'd kind of put myself out there as doing like community-based songwriting projects.
Yeah.
And I got commissioned to go into Franklin Prison into what's called the pipe ward. It's not a ward, it's not a hospital, pipe unit, which is the very centre of the prison structure where all of basically the psychiatric prisoners are.
Really?
Right? And I went in there with a keyboard.
Wow.
And did a load of sessions.
What was the brief? What did they say?
I had to go and basically come out with some kind of songs that were to be arranged for a brass band. And for some reason, the night before the first session, I decided to start watching a program called Prison Break.
I remember Prison Break.
Violent. And I was so freaked out, I slept in. And I had to get up at 5:30 to get there on the dot, you know.
Aye.
And I rang up the guy who commissioned us and said, I'm really sorry I've slept in. If you want to give the commission to someone else, you can. And then he was like, no, we really want you to come back next week.
Mm-hmm. You were like, oh, no, man.
So, I was scared, right? But I turned up the next week, got to the front of the prison, and it was like checking onto a flight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
can I see ID, please? Like, fuck. I'd left me driving license in the house, so you can't come in. I'm like, so embarrassed, trying to get into the most secure prison in the country without identification. Eventually the week after, they had us back, got in, you know, took my shoes off, belt, was with this skinny prison guard called Derek, who was lovely, but he was skinny. I thought, he's my guard. I don't know. He had one key. And it was like that.
Was it like how you'd imagine on like a film? You know, like Prison Break when you walk in and there's like people like sort of running their cups on the.
It was, well, what it was,
like wolf whistling and that.
15 gates before you get in.
Exactly, right? Yeah. So we're going gate after gate, and he had this like master key for gates, and I'm realising the psychological feeling of being in prison. Yeah. Getting it's like an onion. Layers of the onion getting into the middle, and that's where I was. And I was like, and I walked into this like it was like as you'd imagine, mezzanine cells, community area on the bottom floor, and there was this guy sitting there, right?
Your heart's actually racing, mate.
patiently making a gigantic origami swan out of miniature origami swans.
And I did swan out of swans.
I was like, and it looked like he could have been doing it for like 15 years.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And I went in and I sat in this room waiting for them to bring the participants in, just like terrified. And then Derek brought about 5 people in, and we did these sessions. And
is it quite hard to kind of get to that point anyway, or because you were commissioned, was it you didn't have to kind of get yourself in there? Do you know what I mean? So they're already got you access, because access is the hardest thing for anything, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
So
well, that was the thing that I almost just ruined. Yeah. By like being pretty at that point very disorganized. But
I've been in one before. We did some photography via Northumbria University, but we went into the area where they're staying for a year before they get released. So they're almost trying to be introduced to society again. Yeah. But it was still quite claustrophobic, and it's all like solid concrete, and everything's flat panels, and it just feels like there's no air.
What was he called? Did you say the guy you?
Well, I won't mention it actually, because I probably shouldn't, because he gave me some lyrics.
Well, I was going to say then. So, but how did you receive the whole project when you went in? You sat down with him. Did he?
Yeah. Well, I did some sessions with them, because I work in music education a lot, and I like teaching songwriting and explaining how music's written. So everything from the most entry-level stuff, this is a scale. Yeah. These are chords. This is a major chord. It's bright. These are minor chords. It's dark. And you go into the kind of, it's almost like trying to explain to someone who isn't a musician that tonality or chords are like colours. So liken it to an artist. Yeah. You know, a songwriter writes lyrics That's the poetry of a songwriter. A composer uses notes.
Yeah.
That's the poetry of a composer. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, we had Ruby Kelly in.
Oh yeah. I know Ruby very well. She's great.
We love Ruby.
Great
and
podcast.
we were asking her as well, just about what comes first. It's almost what comes first, chicken or the egg. We were like, what comes first, the lyrics or the melody or that kind of thing? Or but everyone, I'm supposed, is different, because you might be walking down the street and go, I can hear something in the background, and it's like a clink, clunk, clunk. It's like, oh, that's quite rhythmic.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
As well,
Like,
you, as well, you were
like
given a
that.
brief, weren't you? You said it was about the psalm or something.
Songwriting, yeah.
But when you went into prison, there was a theme around. What did you say it was?
It was something to do with like the I don't know if it was the centenary of the Battle of the Somme.
Yeah.
And a lot of the participants were very quiet, and some of them were a little bit more involved. And I was given a lyric sheet of poetry from one person in particular, and he'd written his name on the top and crossed it out, being told to, probably by one of the prison guards, to maintain his anonymity. But I could see his name, and I had to Google him. And I was like, and it was the most chilling moment of my life, because I was sitting in my living room and I could see this guy's name, and then I'm suddenly holding a piece of paper that was given to me by this person, and then finding out why they were in there. And I went into this person's cell. I came out the first session, and the prison guard was like, just like out of the blue, went, "You'd probably like to have a look in one of the cells, Barry, wouldn't you?" I'm like, all right then.
Cheers.
So I walked into this room, and it was like a number of the prisoner number.
Yeah.
And also it said double life. So every day this person's reminded, everybody's coming in and out of the cell, why. And it was a tiny little room, as you'd expect.
I love that. There's just a story already in that.
Yeah.
All you need is double life written on an empty wall and a bed.
Yeah.
And then you're bringing in this well, your mind.
That's what we
goes
talked about
somewhere
last week,
else,
didn't we? About Escape from Alcatraz with Clint Eastwood.
We did. It was quite poignant, because you
What
know
was
the
it you
line,
said
don't
again?
you?
Yeah, the
So,
line is,
what was your
when it's
childhood
talking about
like?
how they framed the whole story of the character and about his difficult background and how he grew up and all of this. But all the content and the text and the narrative is, somebody says, "How was your childhood?" And Clint Eastwood says, "Short." And that's it.
That's just one
It's just
word.
the whole story of his life is told in that one word.
Fantastic, isn't it?
It's perfect.
One word. But then your mind starts racing. You're putting a picture together. You're telling the story in your head, going, what was his childhood like? And then you're going back then. What was his parents like? Where did he grow up? And why has he got to this point? And what's led him to here? And all of that kind of stuff from one word. And I'm fascinated with that, Barry. It's
scary.
Yeah, I bet it was. I'm intrigued though, like the difference. So if you were approaching, obviously the approaches must be different if you're working with a group of people versus if you're sitting writing songs for Futureheads or solo stuff.
Yeah.
Is it a difficult departure to do stuff like that as a group? Do you kind of?
Well, no, not really, because the first thing I ever did in music, I became a musician when I was a child, really, about 8 or 9 year old. I got into the piano. My dad bought a piano from the Sunderland classified section for £10, and it got delivered, and it had been in a pub for maybe 50 years. Yeah. And it stank of cigarettes and alcohol.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
But I was interested in this thing, which was almost like a piece of furniture. You know, my dad had no intention of playing it. I just think he fancied having a piano in the back room. Yeah. And I was like, drawn to this, and started playing around with it and that. And enjoyed it and learned a few pieces of music, but then kind of became interested in things like football and basketball and all of that. And it wasn't until realizing, you know, looking back, you know, in the mid-90s, and the heyday of Britpop, that's when I got into the guitar, and I joined an Oasis tribute band. Well, I formed an Oasis tribute band in school.
What was it called?
Alive, which is one of their B-sides, and we played that song and told everyone we wrote it because no one had heard it, right? But it was like, I don't know why we did that. You're allowed to do that though; it's not against the law. I could go on stage and play and do Stairway to Heaven and say I wrote this song and play it, as long as you don't try and release it. Then you have to give credit. But anyway, there was 2 bands in the school. One of them was a Britpop band. The other one was a grunge band. So, you know, Atlantic clash.
Like you eyeballing each other in the corridors.
Yeah,
and
but like we were friends. Obviously, we were kind of brought together, but there was a rivalry there.
Yeah, it's like Britain, America. So you've almost got Nirvana in the corner, and then you guys.
Well, no, they say like Britpop was the answer to grunge.
Yeah, you got flannel over there, then.
Yeah,
you got sambas in the corner.
So they were doing Nirvana and And actually, something that I always think about from that era was like my brother, who's the drummer in the Futureheads, Dave, was 11 when he was in this band, and we were doing a battle of the bands, us and a band called Tilt. That was the grunge band, and they were heavy, right? And they used to do like drop D tuning, and they played all these like heavy songs. And just before they went on, my brother, independently, by the way, snuck round the curtain and found the bass guitar from the other band and put it completely out of tune. Right?
I like that. Full on sabotage.
Just complete carnage, right?
Yeah.
And he was like a shy little boy, and I thought, he told us like a while later.
Yeah.
And I thought,
Sneaky.
He's got his image
Sneaky.
It's a proper sneaky trick.
Just
Isn't
the
it?
image of a close-up of someone peeking through the curtain like that.
Just a pair of eyes.
To be fair, at the time, it's likely that most of the guitars were probably out of tune anyway.
Well,
So I think we only had like one tuner in the whole school.
Yeah, with grunge, you might not notice.
It could have been like a moment in history where just by happy accident you put it out of tune. You created the best track in time, and it ruined everybody else's career.
Imagine if
different direction.
If Tilt went worldwide, and then
Like the whole Radiohead story about the sort of that riff on Creep.
Yeah, Johnny Greenwood.
Yeah.
Trying to ruin it.
Oh, we did that by accident. They've made it. We haven't.
And they're massive.
Don't want commercialism. Don't want a commercialized life, right? Trying to self-sabotage and it just go better and better and better. That's
So the one of the lads, or two of the lads in this band, Tilt, told me about this youth project that was happening in the bunker on a Saturday morning. I went along there. We were friends, really. And that was the first time I did any teaching. Ultimately, I went to the bunker on a Saturday morning. It was 50 pence. And you could go in and play on the big amps. And it was a songwriting. It was like, a lot of youth projects would be based around sport activities, football, maybe he's going out canoeing or whatever. Yeah. This was music-based. And it was particularly focused on songwriting. And it was run by a guy called Dave Murray. And it was called the Sunderland City Centre Detached Youth Project.
Okay.
And that was...
When would this be about, Barry?
In the mid-90s. Well, probably 97. And that was where I became a musician, really, because I learned about collaboration. I met the other members of the Futureheads there who were also drawn to this Saturday morning youth project, and also met some amazing people like Dave Murray and his son Ricky, and Pete and Dave Brewers, who became instrumental in my development. But after being there for about a year, I started to get paid to teach G, D, A minor. So that was my first experience of doing that, and I always really enjoyed it, I was
going to say, did it come easy?
That
bit, the teaching side
of
it.
Yeah, because I was obsessed with the guitar.
Yeah. I
had no interest in writing songs really at that point. I just wanted to be able to be the fastest guitar in the world.
Yeah.
Guitarist, rather. And I didn't manage that. But I loved the kind of community of it.
Yeah.
And the loading and the nervousness and the getting to know how to be on stage. It's a slow process, really. It was for me anyway.
Yeah, I was going to ask that, the performance side of it.
Yeah.
Did that come easy?
I was very shy when I was a kid. Yeah. I was almost, it seems to me, in a social environment, mute.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I was like just observing everything. And I knew that I didn't want to be like that, but I couldn't work out how not to be like that. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? I was so shy. Yeah. I got a job, it was work experience time in secondary school, and I got a job for a week in a guitar shop, a legendary Sunderland guitar shop called Sound World. Another kind of place where I kind of came of age. And I went in on the morning and I said hello to my boss, and I didn't say a single thing till I left. Every night I said goodbye. I was mute.
What was that from, though, Barry? Is that from like a nervous thing, or is that just from like lack of confidence or something as a kid? What is that? Or is it just a disposition of yourself?
I just didn't have anything to say.
But were you bothered?
Did you not feel any discomfort?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You
I felt like I was trapped. I felt like I was trapped in a cage.
Yeah, I felt like that as well.
Yeah. Because we're all out in this room, I think.
We said that even when we started the pod.
I didn't start coming out like out of your shell until like you in your 40s, but you're forced to do it because of the environment you want to put yourself in, which is photography major and film and all that kind of stuff, and you have to.
Yeah.
You've got to project yourself and somebody's got to listen. You've got to start directing people, Yeah. So you tend to kind of become a character and put a hat on sort of thing. Does that yourself with being on the stage as well?
Yeah, I think it was kind of becoming, you might call it, like becoming. When I got the guitar, when I was about 15, it seemed to me to be a perfect kind of way of making noise without having to be chatty. Yeah. And I threw myself into it and was obsessed. Like I read that Hendrix used to use the guitar while he was on the toilet and sleep with it in his bed. So it's like, well, if that's what he did, then that must be what you have to do. So, like now as a teacher, and I do private tuition as part of the degree course that we're running, but basically when I was that age, I was playing the guitar for, I would say, at least 25 to 30 hours every week. Do you know what I mean? So like the progress is rapid. If you're getting music lessons and for an hour a week, and that's the only time you pick up the guitar, you're going to be getting better by 50 hours a year. I would be getting that good in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Plus that's all you're thinking about as well. As a kid, that's
obsessive.
Your life.
Yeah. Drawing guitars.
I was so jealous of people. Like when I was a kid, I was around people like that. So we all went to a musical family. We sang. My brother had a Fender. Right?
Oh, really?
It's like cool, right?
Very.
And I wanted to play. You already said that. I just want to be the fastest. Yeah. I had no patience at all. I've got guitars now. I can can play 10 chords. I can mess about with it.
That's enough for
jazz. I can't do anything
mate.
else with it. But you know what I mean? I never had the patience to take it any further. But I remember being like a teenager, that Britpop era.
It was great.
Picking up your brother's Fender, plugging it in, and actually just turning up some music and pretending I was.
Yeah.
Because I
think we're all the same. I mean, I bought some drumsticks. Well, I didn't have drum kits. I just bought some drumsticks. It's like the incentive.
I wonder these, man. I've got like a graveyard of things. Somebody just dropped the clarinet off at my house last week.
Oh God,
right?
They're difficult to play.
Yeah, so I tried that, put it down. So that's interesting. I'll come back to it. Got my guitar, got that. I had percussion lessons when I was younger, but again, just didn't have the resolve to kind of keep pushing.
It needs to become an obsession.
Yeah,
and I feel like without that obsession, which is also called enthusiasm, really. I suppose that the learning curve is so long that a lot of people kind of put it down. You've got to find a way of enjoying it. If you don't enjoy it, then if you enjoy something, it gives you energy.
Yeah.
If you don't enjoy it, it takes your energy. So the energy just runs out.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So like,
totally.
You're kind of finding a purpose as well. You're finding a purpose of who, and then also kind of, was that bringing you out of your shell as well, Barry? Was it kind of, this is a good excuse, and it's helped me as a kid become me in a way, like express yourself?
I think ultimately it brought me out of my shell too much.
Okay, really? Really? Yeah.
Eventually. Yeah. But, it was a kind of gradual thing. But I would want to be a guitarist, right? And eventually I realised that if I really wanted to be in control, I needed to be a songwriter who sang. And I remember sitting in my room and trying to sing with a little video, like a little cassette recorder with a microphone and a guitar. Just very simple, and singing, trying to find a way to sing. You know what I mean? Like a voice. And I was like, at first, singing in a kind of semi-American accent. And then I was thinking about some of the singers I was listening to at the time, people like Frank Sinatra, Lou Reed, Johnny Rotten, Billie Holiday. Do you know what I mean?
Love it. Yeah.
And then it's like, hold on a minute. These people, when you hear them sing, it sounds like a person. It's not a generalized thing. So I'm like, I need to sing in my own accent. Like, I have to do it.
You're not mimicking somebody. You're trying to find your own voice.
It's automatically real.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that singing in some kind of composed accent makes music unreal. If you think about like Mick Jagger or Robert Plant or what, it's not about that. But for me, to try and find a voice as an artist, it dawned on me that, and I was really into punk. Yeah. Like new wave punk, and it was all this kind of like almost exaggerated colloquial accents. Do you know what I mean? Like, so that was my way in, and I was kind of, as soon as I found a way to sing, I was away as a songwriter, because I guess I'd had all this energy built up inside of me, and now I had a real vehicle to be someone or something like that.
I guess like in many respects as well, like you sort of need impersonation for authenticity.
It's a
When
stage
you
of
start with your own
development.
voice, where do you start? You start by what you hear and what you like the sound of, and what speaks to you. When you say they're carrying that own voice, that personality comes out of the voice. It's different between kind of impersonation and mimicry and the karaoke.
Well, I used to want to be Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
To be honest, when I was 15, I'm surprised I didn't get a perm. I wanted to be. I bought a wah-wah pedal. I used to wear flares. I used to wear blouses.
Yeah.
Because that's what he used to wear. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was like living in the 60s, and I was like, and then I kind of got into Radiohead, and I wanted to be Johnny Greenwood, so I grew my hair like him. I used to wear like kind of semi-ironic t-shirts and really attack my guitar like I was trying to snap it in half. And that's important part of the stages of development, you know, mimicry, you know, and then it's almost like the influences are like become part of your songwriting palette.
Yeah.
Same as like a chef, you know, like what they've eaten becomes what they understand and what they can cook.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel like music and food are very linked in that respect.
I think so. We're all kind of cultural magpies, though, aren't we? That's how history evolves over time.
Yeah. Well, as a youth, you're shaped by the music you listen to as well. And we did the same. It's like, you know, I had like Metallica badges down your lapels. You know, you wrote in the middle of the white on the tie. So you wrote names in the middle of the white on your tie.
Well,
and then I had an undercut, but at school I had to kind of have it down.
Because of Terminator 2?
No, because of Ned's Atomic Dustbin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so there's a throwback. So I was into that. It's kind of finding your own niche in these own bands, which nobody listened to, like Jesus Jones and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I was into that era, but you couldn't have it up for school. You had to have it down.
So you like Levelers then?
I like Levelers.
Wonder stuff I loved. And then I was in. The thing is, there's so many. We're going to talk about the Beatles. I don't want to have to talk about the Beatles, but it's one of those things.
I've never heard. You brought it up.
I was more the Doors, because I'm kind of like, how do you have an excuse that you didn't really like the Beatles? I'm like, well, I didn't really listen to it, but in the car with my parents, I was listening to Wings. So I heard Wings, but I wasn't really introduced to.
Well, they say that's the band the Beatles could have been.
yeah.
But it's just but that shaped who I was as a youth.
Of course.
Your DMs and all what you wear, and that, it just really heavily does influence who you are.
Well, it's called the formative years.
Yeah, of course.
You know, and I feel really sorry for a certain generation who went through the pandemic during what should have been their formative years. Well, it is their formative years. You know, I was like hanging out in guitar shops and, you know, buying guitar strings and going through to the Metro Centre and buying like tablature books to try and learn how to play Led Zeppelin riffs. And
what you've done this week, I've bought loads of plectrums.
No, exactly. You know, like and
got a full range of plectrums. I love it.
They're getting locked up for kind of 18 months during your formative years.
You should just go and sit in windows for like a full afternoon on a Saturday.
I couldn't afford anything.
I couldn't afford anything. No.
Aye, but you're going in.
I'll come back later.
Yeah, exactly. Can I ever go this one? Yeah, or like go in and like see a really good guitarist sitting, trying out like a Les Paul or something, just thinking, what? It's like, how do you do that? You know, like it is a shame about Windows.
Oh, it's a massive shame.
But yeah,
so that bit of time between Alive, Oasis tribute to Futureheads.
Yeah,
what was that journey like? Do you remember your first gig, Futureheads gig?
Oh yeah, I'll never forget it.
What was it? Where was it?
It was at the Ashbury Cricket Club in the Ditchburn Suite downstairs. We were, I think, second on, and we'd been rehearsing for 3 months for the first gig.
How old were you at this time, Barry?
19.
I was going to say, did you feel fully formed, or you bricked yourself?
We played for 8 minutes.
Yeah.
5 songs. Because our early songs, some of them were less than a minute long.
Yeah.
And it was the most exhilarating experience I'd ever had in my life, because we put a lot of preparation into it, and all we wanted was to become the tightest, fastest, not aggressive in a kind of macho way, but like our influences were bands like The Clash, Devo, XTC. There was musical elements. It wasn't just pure aggression. It was kind of like we wanted to be regarded as a band who could really play, but weren't really self-indulgent in that way. So we had rules about like no guitar solos, no everyone had to sing. So we put a lot of work into our vocal harmony arrangements because we felt like that would make us stand out.
With democratic
Quite a
as a band,
unique
like,
sound.
isn't it?
No, it was
yeah.
because we'd done enough bands and to know that if you're going to do it, you need to be very focused because you can end up just meandering. And in the early days, we had like almost like a manifesto of a work ethic, you know, like drinking cans in rehearsal. When we used to rehearse in the morning.
Yeah, professional outfit.
And it was like,
it
was like if there was a section of like a tricky section, say you're going from like, I don't know, like from one time signature to the next, or some really fiddly little bit, we used to loop it, like say we're going to do this section for 3 minutes without stopping.
Yeah.
And so the band got so tight and then we started doing gigs and it was just like, okay, that felt like we had no idea that we'd even end up signing a small record deal or anything like that. But it was such a thrill to be making music, the four of us. And at the time, this is with our original drummer, Peter Brewis, but it felt like a real adventure. Yeah. And we were like adamant, you know, we didn't make a demo. We made a record in Peter's house. And I went down to Marks and Spencer's and blagged a load of display boards and took them home. And I don't know why, I was obsessed with German language at the time. It felt like quite like a new wave punk thing. So I plastered loads of German dictionary pages on these sheets, these thick cardboard sheets, and cut them out into squares. And then put the Futureheads, printed it off, and cut out the Futureheads and glued it on all of them. I think we did 50. And that was our demo, really. But we said it was our first EP on CDRs and were selling them for 50 pence each. And we sent them out as if they were like, they didn't even have any credits on them, you know?
It did just feel right. Did you feel like you'd struck kind of, right, this is our sound?
I think we felt like artists.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, we felt like we had something unique. And I think that's what we should all go for in life is to be who you are.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm not saying everyone's got to be like completely eccentric, but like everyone's got their own path, their own destiny, their own identity. And I feel like we have to nourish that.
Again, it's authenticity, isn't it? I mean, like,
to be authentic.
I think sometimes people think, yeah, it's quite a big burden to call yourself eccentric sometimes because people aspire.
I know, but
they aspire to it if they don't feel like they are.
The thing is,
you know,
people call you it,
but everybody's authentic.
I think so.
I think so.
Deep down.
Yeah, if you can pull it out.
But usually we change that and we try and fit in all the time. It's just
alter egos.
That's really hard, isn't it? Because at school,
Mm.
everybody wants to try and fit in all the time.
Yeah.
But you should be doing the opposite. You should just be, you know, being you and doing what you want to do. Do you know what I mean?
Wish I had been cool at school. Well, undercuts and that.
Yeah, the thing is, that wasn't cool. That wasn't cool.
No,
you're pushing back and pushing against, and you end up going like, well, I don't want to dress like this. So you kind of try and go the opposite way.
Mate,
trying to find an identity, you know.
I had a perm and a flat top in the same year. I mean, come on.
Impressive.
Honestly.
Who was the barber?
Look back on it now.
Skills at barber. You know, done both in a year. Yeah.
Honestly. Somebody called it toast on beans rather than beans on toast. It's the right clip.
But the thing is, what I love about Futureheads as well, Barry, it's like you've got that accent comes through, and you as soon as you put a track on, you know who this is, and that is the key to anything. That's the key to being individual. That's the key to standing out. And I love the fact that you get yourself stuck in with the artwork as well.
Yeah.
You've got to have, like, it's not creative control, but you know that it's been touched by the people who've made it.
I think it's important for that, you know, like I think a great artist or artists that do that is Jack White. You know, he's like a real example of that fully embodied artist who has a master plan approach to the whole thing, from the marketing, and often and I think we're the same. Ultimately, when we started to get into the business, we weren't very business savvy about how to be creative business operators, really. But we kind of started this journey, and it was interesting because obviously we're up in Sunderland. We started playing gigs around the doors, and then we did our first gig in Newcastle.
Where was that?
That's a good question. I think it was in what was formerly called the Tut and Shive, which is now called the Dog and Parrot, I think, upstairs. So we started to expand our kind of areas of activity, and then I think we did a gig. Yeah, it was in it was like a midweek gig in the Cumberland Arms, in Biker.
Yeah,
upstairs.
I love that pub.
Yeah, in the Ousburn Valley, and this guy, we were finishing our last song, and this bloke came over. It's like, that was amazing. He kind of happened to come in. He was on like a stag do, and he caught our last 30 seconds of a song, and he's like, "Oh, I'm a music manager. I'm working for a company in London. I think you're amazing, and I'd love to have a chat with you about, seeing if we can sign you up to the management company." And that was interesting. It's like the first time we'd had any connection to London.
Outside the region.
And were you actively looking as well at that point? We'd be looking for management.
Well,
or were you still in that process of it just being too quick? Or
I wasn't really that focused on that part of it, but Ross Millard, my long-time collaborator and the other guitarist in the band, was a little bit more industry orientated, and once we'd made this EP, he'd sent it out to labels and people in the industry, like by the post, and we got someone got back in touch, a guy called Matt Wilkinson, who was working for Rough Trade Publishing, and he wasn't offering us a publishing deal, but he was offering to set up a small record label to release an EP, and that coincided with this time of meeting this guy. His name was Scott, who was working as a kind of a regional scout for a big management company called Big Life Management. And that was when it started to kind of form. And his boss, essentially a legendary music business guy called Jazz Summers, came to...
name.
He was quite a guy. He passed away a few years ago, Jazz, but Jazz was a legend. He came up to Newcastle to the Bridge Hotel, and we did like a gig for him, and it was this is when I first started to feel nervousness about playing, because there was an energy of performance which was like anticipation and excitement, but suddenly it felt to me like there was a pressure.
I was going to say it was the next. You had a crowd, you had an audience, you had an expectation.
Well, you might say something to lose.
Yeah, because you're leveling up now, aren't you? It's a different thing.
But when you're an unknown entity, though, as well, and you're just starting off, you're putting your sound into the world. But then when you've got people that are defining that, outwards looking in.
He said to us, like, he came up and he was like, "This is a great band." He's like, "I don't think you're going to ever be a stadium band, but I think you could have a career in music if you wanted it. We could try and do something." And this was like in the early noughties. This was really just as the Strokes were breaking. This happened very quickly. So suddenly guitar music had been reinvented, but it was a retrospective approach to guitar music, more influenced by the 70s and the early 80s. And the kind of the pinnacle of that, the bomb, if you will, was the Strokes, who became a global band. And they were wearing blazers.
They were put together as well, weren't they? They were put together like
maybe. I mean, I know they had. I think they worked with like maybe a very influential producer who guided them. But they all looked like models.
Yeah.
But their music was great. Yeah. Like fantastic indie music, and suddenly indie started to. But we'd been going for a couple of years at that point, and we weren't really getting anywhere particularly fast. We were doing what's called the toilet circuit, which is, at the time, there was a syndicate of venues called Barfly. And a lot of the big cities had them, and we were going around this Barfly circuit, and our manager was, funding that, basically paying for our travel and, trying to kind of build the bands. And no one was coming to see us, you know what I mean? Like, we signed this tiny record label with a guy who put it out on vinyl. That did well. It got into like the top 10 of the Rough Trade chart, just like literally in the shop, but that was enough at the time to start getting us press in the NME. We were like an NME band, like
that mid-noughties time was exciting, wasn't it? I mean, coming out of Britpop, I lived in Glasgow at the time.
Oh, did you?
I lived and worked in Glasgow for 5 years, and that's when Franz Ferdinand were coming out.
Yeah. I lived in Glasgow.
Interpol, I went to see Interpol play at
brilliant.
King Tut's. Tiny little gig.
Yeah.
Standing at this gig, Simon Pegg was standing next to us. It was, but everything was so understated. But it felt like a movement.
Well, yeah, because
it was really, really powerful.
We talk about going to the V Festival, and you've got Embrace, you've got Prodigy, you've got Franz Ferdinand, you've got all of these, all the huge, like, you know, and Travis were out then. It was a huge time for guitar bands.
It was the last great era.
Yeah.
Well, Franz Ferdinand were breaking things or changing sounds. You know, it was really exciting.
Well, Franz were like really crucial to us because we supported them in North America.
Yeah.
And we went on first, but they really just broke in America, and they were playing like canny big venues, and that was our first real tour of America. Mm-hmm. And they took us around the whole thing, Canada, all around both coasts, in the middle, first time on a tour bus. And they opened the door for a lot of British bands, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, we toured America 15 times altogether. I mean, I think in 1 year we did, when I say tour, I mean, I don't mean like, because you could do like 6 months and still not really scratch America, but I'm talking 15 trips to America, whether it be like a West Coast tour, East Coast tour. We did a tour all the way across Canada once. And, but yeah, Franz were like incredible, exciting, glamorous band with great songs, you know, like clever songs, groovy, danceable. And watching them was kind of like, fucking hell, like this band is like on fire.
Does that influence you as well, Barry?
Well, of course,
because you're standing at the side and you're going, hang on, lads.
No, it was like...
Does that force you to change, or do you go, no, let's stick to who we are? Because that can kind of seep into...
It must be osmosis, though, to a degree. You must pick things up that you're...
I know, but you don't want to change yourself, because if you change yourself, then that's not who you are.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? But it's kind of, do you have to pull back, or you going, hang on, I'm going out, I feel I'm becoming that, or I'm pushing this in the wrong direction?
Well, I think, again, it's like the hardest thing to maintain integrity as an artist is to be true to yourself. Yeah. And, you know, I was kind of getting at with regards to like pressure and stuff like that. When your hobby becomes your job, something happens, and your relationship with your creativity changes, because suddenly, you know, you're in the race. And really, the people that are running the race is the industry people. Yeah. Because they require their artists to become more and more successful in order to have income. You know, so I can't remember how many times, but there was so many, say Monday morning management ring, you're going to be on the front cover of the NME this week. Tomorrow we're going to get a phone call as to where you need to go, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. It happened again and again and again. Eventually it did happen. But that you suddenly kind of like become emotionally attached to success. Yeah. And that is problematic for an artist, because we're not kind of, generally speaking, business orientated. So you're suddenly putting a lot of your self-esteem in the hands of others. Yeah. And that's very dangerous for anyone.
Yeah, I get that.
I think that's all creative industries, isn't it? Because once you get to a certain level, you can't go down, because that's your default now. And then all of the meetings, then the management, and then they're in your ear. Yeah. Well, we need another album. When's the next song coming out? And you're like, the pressure just, you know, it really kind of pushes on you, doesn't it?
Of course it does, yeah. Because, you know, it's your life. You know, you can't...
You don't want it to go away, do you, Barry? It's kind of, you know, you've worked so hard, you grafted to get to that point.
Yeah.
And you're like, let's hold on to this with day your life. But holding on could be so much, though. You hold on too tight. I think that's a bad thing as well.
I think it's, you know, like... small tasks, you know, like making a cup of tea. You can make a cup of tea. You can do that, guaranteedly. Even if your kettle's broke, you can go and get another kettle, or you've run out of tea bags. You can make that happen, but becoming a massive global band, you can't do that. Yeah. Like just by kind of going to turn the kettle on. Yeah. It's like you have to have offices,
cogs and wheels. And
you know, like we signed like a global deal with a major record label, right? And this was like something we aimed for years. It was like, that was the thing that was going to do it, to get the advance. We like basically left our jobs. We're living on like PDs. You know, we were recording music in London, practically living there, all sharing a room in this hotel called the Royal National Hotel in Russell Square. and it was like all 4 of us in a room.
Yeah.
It was, I think it would only cost £15 a night in this hotel.
Really?
Yeah, breakfast included. And we were working with this guy called Andy Gill, who was a producer who ended up doing quite a bit of our first album. And we were walking from Russell Square to Chancery Lane, down Leather Lane, kind of getting, and we weren't in Sunderland, we were becoming like this thing, but we hadn't done anything yet, do you know what I mean? But the whole point was to get that record deal. And I remember we lined up a record deal with a different label, and it was all set, you know, we're going to like go out, we were doing a recording session that day, and manager was going to come, take us for some food, meet the record company, sign a record deal, and then crack on. And he came to pick us up and says, we'll go for a drink before we go to see the label, and told us that the record deal had fallen through, right? And I remember this is the only time I've ever seen Ross lose his temper.
Yeah.
And he banged his hand on the table in this pub, and he broke the legs of this table. He was furious.
Yes.
You know, because it felt like we started to really feel that pressure. The pressure of ambition, really, I suppose.
Yeah.
So it was like, and eventually we did sign a different deal, blah, 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 but we signed a global deal. So we were like, we had a good team in the UK. We signed a Seymour Stein's record label in America, you know, like, who released Prince and Blondie, and it was like amazing. And then one time we went to Japan, and the first time we went, it was pretty good in Japan. Second time, the kind of label chaperone who was looking after us said, I'm really sorry. I was like, what's the matter? It's like, well, we haven't really been able to promote your new album. I'm like, why? It's like, well, Paris Hilton's released a DJ album, and the record label's putting all of their time and attention into that. And I suddenly started thinking, you know, like, what can you do about that?
Yeah.
Like, I can't ring up Warner's in Japan and say, and bollock them. Because I don't even know who they are. Do you know what I mean? It's like, what are you going to do? Do you know what I mean? Like,
what's the crack?
So it was like, things started to, it was, you know, there was different areas where, you know, we did well in America. I think we did really well in the UK. I was going to ask that,
as a place you went to where it just bombed, you think this is not right?
Well, it's like, you've got to put the work in, you know, like we were doing like kind of big festivals in England and, well, the UK, quite high up the bill. And then we'd go and we'd be out in France and Germany and trying to build the band, you know, but there's only so much you can do. Yeah. It's not a case of if you put the hours in, you get the return, because it's not like that. It's almost like, not mystical, but like...
But something's got to click. There's got to be a moment, isn't there?
There has to be some alignment of fortune in order for the growth of the... Because I feel like businesses are like magnets, and the magnetic pull has to grow. But the way it grows is a bit mysterious. Yeah. You know, but like after a certain point, it was like, okay, we kind of felt a little bit like we'd reached our full potential commercially. Yeah. And that was difficult to deal with, because obviously we'd been instilled with this optimistic ambition, which meant that we felt like we could become a stadium band or something like that, you know?
Yeah. Was that across the band? Were you all thinking that? Like,
I don't know, but like,
feel like...
I think there's different attitudes within the band towards it, but you know, like, it was hard for me because I felt a lot of creative responsibility for the band. Yeah. I'm not the only creative person in the band, everyone is, but a lot of, you know, like I was, I suppose, the principal driver for the band. You know, I named the band, and I was obviously writing more songs and whatnot, and I suppose to some degree my vision for the band was what we became with the harmonies and all of that. But it's always been an equal partnership in terms of the kind of business side. But I felt a lot of pressure, and I really started to struggle because I'd lost the ability to create self-esteem. And that's when you can have what's called disillusionment, because I became used to walking on stage and hearing this kind of this crazy sound, and that became less and less, and the downtime at home became wider and wider. The opportunities were naturally starting to subside. So suddenly I'm like, who am I?
It's a big thing to deal with. I mean,
it is. Yeah. And I had like a series of mental health issues that resulted in me having to take a break from music. And ultimately, I was in psychiatric hospital on 3 occasions. And it was a difficult time.
That must have been tough.
Yeah.
So, Barry, do you think you were holding on too tight then, like I mentioned?
I don't know. I feel like I lost control. That was mainly it. I think...
Did you feel like you were in control in the first place, though? Because, all of these things, you've got to have the trifecta. But that number one thing has to be luck. The talent and the work ethic's always there, but the luck has to be in to make this like global success, which you're talking about.
Yeah.
But
you can make yourself lucky, and you can also make yourself unlucky.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think it's like people who manage to... I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not in any way complaining of... I don't feel any bad kind of energy towards the band and what the band achieved. But it's all about perspective, and what it took for me was to basically step away from, the bread and butter of being a professional creative person, to have that break, to create a space in my life for other things to emerge so I could rebalance and reevaluate my life. And that took some time, to be honest.
Do you remember the trigger points, though? You said you had 3, you went psychiatric 3 times, yeah? Do you remember the trigger points?
Not really. I mean, I think, to be honest, I was just very unwell. I mean, like my day-to-day life had been so unstable and with a limited foundation, because I was basically like a traveling, what's the word? Like a troubadour. So like, you know what I mean? Like I was like the music man. We all were.
Yeah.
But I was like the front man, felt a lot of pressure. And we set up a music festival, and we ran it for several years. And that was when I really started to feel commercial pressure, because it was difficult to make that really successful. Even though we did grow to the point, I think, the last year we did it was called Split Festival. We did it in Mowbray Park, and we booked Dizzy Rascal and Maxima Park, and I think we sold like 8,000 tickets, which is obviously Glastonbury 80,000, but for like a city centre festival is good. But I became like a kind of front man for that, and I started to feel a lot of additional pressure, and I was married, and my marriage broke down. It was just a culmination of things, and it all kind of surrounded me, and it made me difficult. It was difficult for me to function in any of those areas. So I had to shut down, and I had to go and heal and rest. But because I kept on having to go back to hospital, it was a bit of a worry, because I thought I could end up being someone who's in and out of hospital for the rest of my life. And the thing is, when you go into a psychiatric hospital, it's almost like when you come out, you're coming out into a different world as a different person. And you have to not necessarily entirely start again. Obviously, some people will. Some people go into hospital and they're destitute, and they have to come out and literally find somewhere to live. And, I wasn't not in that position, but I had to eventually admit that I couldn't continue to try and exist as I had been. And therefore I had to not redesign myself, but kind of have a different purpose.
But it's also laying, I mean, I've had mental health problems as well, Barry, and
I think everyone has.
Laying ground beneath your feet. When you spend so much time, like you say, as a travelling troubadour, everything feels so temporary, doesn't it?
It was, yeah. But I decided, because when I, through travelling to spend a lot of time in London, I'd become very interested in food, because we worked with this guy, Andy Gill, who was like a real kind of foodie. And he was like making his own kimchi.
Which is properly fashionable now.
Oh, yeah. He was like, have you ever tried red leg partridge, Barry? I'm like, what? You know what I mean? I've been raised on like turkey burgers, and that's like, take me out for oysters, sushi, kimchi, dolsot bibimbap, shawarma, all these things. I'm like, wow, food's amazing.
Yeah.
I've always been kind of greedy.
Yeah.
I mean, Nana did a lot of the cooking when I was growing up, and she was making amazing stuff, you know, like broth and dumplings, mince and dumplings.
Broth and dumplings, we talked about this,
with barley in. And lap, she called it lap, which is...
My granddad called it lap as well.
Breast of lamb.
Yeah.
Delicious.
Fatty, but amazing.
But there wasn't much of it in...
King of meats, yeah.
King of meats. Sorry.
I used to go in and steal all the lap, like.
Yeah, my granddad would stand and cook it. Yeah, no windows open and out, no doors open.
No, opening the back door on like a winter's day.
It's incredible.
Yeah, that condensation was trickling down those windows.
Exactly.
On the windowsill.
It's like, it's broth and dumplings.
Yeah.
But then really got into food and got into cookery because I realised maybe I could, because I'd lost a hobby, which was music. It became a job, so I got into cooking. So when I came out of hospital for the third time, there was this great, it was like it was called Juniper's Pantry. It was on the Barnes Roundabout, and they were looking for an apprentice chef. And I'd already met the guy, Dave Gill, because we used to organise a festival, and I was in charge of bringing in the food vendors. And he came down. He was making these amazing sausage rolls and Scotch eggs. And I went on as an apprentice there.
I had no idea that was
part of your history. This is part.
That's incredible.
I did not know
Talk about a crossover.
But it's the thing is, it's in the creative kind of realm, though, isn't it?
But you said that earlier, didn't you? You can see the connection between food and music. It's very similar.
Yeah.
But it's you're behind the stage.
Yeah.
The front of house is where I used to work in music, and now I was basically backstage, and I was making lots and lots of pastry, hot water pastry, and doing these fantastic heavy sausage rolls, chorizo sausage rolls, black pudding sausage rolls. We were doing a Sunday dinner delivery business, and I was roasting 300 potatoes, making 150 Yorkshire puddings, chopping up all the belly pork, and it was amazing. But after a while, I realised I was never going to really become Margot Pierre White. Because I'd got into it, I think if you're really going to work in food, you've got to start as a teenager, really. I mean, I know some people manage, but it dawned on me that as much as I loved food, I didn't want it to be my job.
Yeah. I was going to say, did you feel the same ambition creeping up that you did in the band? Because when you've got that mindset, Barry, when you get into something,
I become obsessed
with it. I want to
it.
make the best pastry in the
I was
world.
making like 50 Scotch eggs in a go. Have you ever tried to do that? It's a nightmare.
We talked about that a couple of weeks ago, didn't we?
But the fact is that what got you to, a bad state of mental health in the first place from one obsession, did you feel that could be another with the cooking?
I've got to be honest with you, I got pretty sick pretty quick of getting burnt.
Really? So something else stopped you. Yeah.
I'm like... Okay. I'm covered in scars, covered in burns. I got one burn, and it was funny because it was an exclamation mark. I'm like, I felt like I was in a cartoon. I was like, my favourite thing though, he used to buy these venison haunches, and he used to cook them overnight in red wine and juniper and garlic and all that. And he used to, whenever he wasn't looking, I was tearing strips off that because it was so delicious.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, this is like incredible.
Yeah.
So like I basically, whilst I was doing a bit of cookery, and obviously I wasn't making a great living doing that, I went in as an apprentice. So I started, it was my mum, was like, why don't you start doing some music lessons? So I went on Facebook and advertised to do private tuition across different guitar, songwriting, singing, keyboards. And I got a few interests. And then I contacted my friend, Dave Harper from Pop Rex, who passed away.
Yeah.
And Pop Rex at that time was on Forster Street, its first incarnation, and they had a few rooms. So I got my piano in there. I can't remember that. It was like this very heavy piano, took it in, and I set up a room. And on Saturdays, I did back-to-back private lessons all day, 8 hours every week. And I'm like really enjoying it because it was a mixture of things. And I realized actually what I love to teach is, I love teaching people how to play the guitar, right? But it's a bit boring. Put your finger there, What I really enjoy is like teaching people how to really love music, you know, like to be interested in the history of music, to be interested in becoming a writer of music.
It's like the technician versus the creative, isn't it? Like,
yeah,
you know,
like
one's
watching someone
instructive
practice scales is fine. I like to do that, but I don't think it's great value. I always try to like make people intrigued about the emotions that are involved in music.
Yeah, it's like coming in, you know, if somebody came in on a morning and go, right, what are you thinking about today? We're going to write a song about what you're thinking about today before you walk in the room. Not what chords we're going to learn. We're going to learn what that song is, what the
that
story is.
authenticity thing again, wasn't it? It's
Building
like,
a
how do
story.
you, building a story.
Building a story.
Yeah. You can work towards learning to play the guitar,
Yeah.
but being a musician and thinking like one, and the creative is a different thing.
It's almost tapping on a table, like making something up by just doing that.
Yeah. Well, I was very lucky because one of my first lessons was with 3 siblings who were all, I think the 2 youngest ones were still in primary school. The eldest was in, I think, early secondary school. Surname Smith. And Hannah Smith, the eldest Luke Smith, and the middle is Tom Smith, also known as Tom A. Smith, who's the Northeast's most up-and-coming artist now.
Right. Okay.
And he was, I think he was just finishing primary school, and he had a guitar. And I said to him, "Can you play the guitar?" He was like, "Yeah." I said, "Do you know any songs?" He says, "Yeah, I know 150 songs." And he'd memorized 150 songs when he was still in primary school, because his dad had a real passion for music, and he'd learned, like, he could play like Echo and the Bunnymen, the Smiths, Oasis, the Beatles, and he basically started build up this kind of amazing collection. He started doing gigs, so he supported like Catfish and the Bottlemen, and now he's like really starting to make moves. He supported Elton John, and he's doing like amazing things. And I was meeting all these interesting people. Not only the students, which a lot of them were kids, but also their parents. Yeah. These interesting people who were like gravitating towards Pop Recs, which was a real kind of game-changing cultural hub in Sunderland city centre, you know. And I was lucky to be in there as a music teacher 1 day a week. And then I got a message from someone on Facebook asking if I'd go down to East Durham College and cover for one of their lecturers. So I went down, and I should have maybe inquired as to what it was, but it turned out
geography or something like that.
I was just like,
double P this morning.
Be cooking. Yeah, the kitchen getting burnt again.
Yeah, it's like I knew it was something to do with music, but I turned up and it was performing arts, which is very different from teaching music. So it's all like drama, but it was mainly the music part. But I'm like, I don't really know what to do. So I was playing piano, these show tunes, and started to like explore. And then one night I was in a pub, the Ivy House, and I met this guy, this like kind of eccentric, really well-spoken guy at the bar. And he's like, "What do you do?" I was like, "Oh, I'm a music teacher." He's like, "I'll give you a job." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "I'm a head teacher in a primary school." And I thought he was just like, had too many Star of Brahmins or something, right? So he said he gave us his email, and I thought, whatever. And then I seen him again. He's like, "Why didn't you send us an email?" So I ended up getting this job in a primary school as a peripatetic music teacher, and I was going in, and maybe it's like 18 months before, I was at Glastonbury, and then I'm standing in a school hall with 200 kids doing hymn practice, and it was like, this is like really interesting. Yeah. Again, all to do with songwriting, really, but I had like guitar lessons, and it started to, and then I got another job at this independent music college in Gateshead, and that was where I met my now business partner, a guy called Dan Donnelly, who's in, he used to play in Wonder Stuff, actually. Yeah. And he's playing in Levels at the minute.
He played mandolin on our track with Ruby.
Well, yeah. So he was my boss, right? And he asked me if I fancied setting up a college. And honestly, I really was not interested in it, because I was, as far as I was concerned, I'd found a cushy job. It was well paid. I didn't have to run any businesses, which I'd had really negative experiences with, really. Yeah. You know, kind of with regards to mental health and all of that. Yeah. Nevertheless, we started to explore it. And I was trying to actually set up like a rehearsal room business or something like that. Set up a community interest company. I was working at the Sage with autistic adults doing this great project. I was like really trying out lots of different things, and eventually we created Northern Academy of Music Education, which is now in its 4th year, and we're partner college of Sunderland Uni, and we're right in the thick of it. In I would say in what's known as the heart of the city now, which is kind of Keele Square area. Yeah. But in order to have somewhere to teach the music, this is the craziest thing I've ever done. What we did was we took on a pub.
Yeah, the
Peacock, yeah, in order to have somewhere to teach music. And that was crazy that we did
venue,
that.
Though. It's perfect awesome solution, though, Barry.
Yeah, it is.
And well done for doing it, you know.
Well, honestly, it was like jumping off a cliff because we had no idea what was going to happen. And we opened in November 2019. The building was covered in scaffolding. And we had to get the doors open because we couldn't teach. Well, we could teach, I suppose, but we were trying to set up our own thing. So me and Dan were working in the bar. And Dan was like, "Oh, let's do this. It'll be great." But the thing is, Dan has worked in a bar in New York. He lived in New York for years, and he used to run a bar. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, he knows what he's doing. Of course he does, but it wasn't. I remember the first Friday night. The building was covered in scaffolding, right?
I love it.
Covered in scaffolding, right? And it even said on some Harris fencing at the door, "Do not enter," because during the day it was a building site, so we were only allowed to open on a night and on a weekend. So, but we got the keys. We had an open party the first weekend, which was great. All the friends came down. It was canny. I think we only had 1 keg of each drink because we had no money. No, literally the float for the first week was Dan's cash.
Yeah.
We didn't have a bank account. We had to open the doors because we couldn't work. We couldn't teach because we didn't want to take on teaching jobs. We were trying to set up our we had some gigs going on and stuff like that. But the first proper Friday night, we opened the doors and we made £100 for the whole night, right? And the next morning, I went down to the pub because that was our first match day. We'd never done a match day yet, but right. So we went down. Me and Dan. Dan opened the door, and we hugged each other, and were almost crying, because we thought, "What have we done? What on earth have we done? We've taken on this pub. Friday nights were dead. Let's see what a match day is like." Opened the doors. Within about 10 minutes, we ran out of pound coins. So I'm running round to the bookies. I knew all the bookies. At this point, we didn't have a bank account. I knew all the bookies. I used to go in and get bags of pound coins because I couldn't get it out the bank. We didn't have an account. It took us about 9 months to get a bank account. It was a nightmare, right? Match day. The pub was heaving. We had 2 bartenders. Yeah. But it was like Crystal Maze. Right. The last level.
Yeah.
You're trying to grab £10 notes. It's like
Barry falls 2 bags of coins in his hand.
No. What do you call him again?
It was Richard O'Brien.
Richard O'Brien.
So we were like, what on earth was that? I mean, in hindsight, it was still pretty tame, compared to what it's like now in a match day because we've built it up. But it was like, okay, that could be that was the first challenge. How do we make match days work?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And one of my mates, Simon Mowbray, was like, "You know what you should do in a match day? Like what? Put some roast potatoes on the bar." And I thought,
social club style, like old school.
Roast potatoes.
Yeah.
Wouldn't they be hot? I was serving cold roast potatoes. I thought, what about, I know what I'll do. I went out, I thought, I'll do Savoy dips.
Oh, right? Mate.
Right?
I wanted to bring that. I'm going to come on to this in a minute.
So Savoy dips, and I'm there peeling bloody Savoys, putting them in. I'm like, it costs a bloody fortune. I can't be doing that. But we did give them out that first week. Next match day, I thought, what would be easier? Stotties, ham, peas pudding, and butter.
Oh, got to have butter.
Right? So I remember we bought 10 Stotties, went to Ibbotson's, got some nice ham, proper ham,
Stringy ham.
bitter,
It's got to be stringy ham.
butter, generous amount of peas pudding, chopped them into 8, so like 80 portions went out of the tray. Full of families, mainly blokes, drinking double Maxim, drinking Estrella, tray. Do you want a peas pudding? Do you want to have a peas pudding sandwich? How much? It's free.
Sounds like a VIP lounge to me. That.
He's like, I says that they're on the house. You what, mate? Then I seen this image of a bloke drinking a pint of real ale, double Maxim, the Edwardian nut brown ale, stotty cake. And I thought, there's something in this. There's something important in this. This is like Wearside, this ancient drink.
Which predates brown ale, by the way, the recipe.
Yeah. Well, Newcastle brown ale, it's not the real recipe, is it now?
Yeah.
Not for many years.
It's not.
But you know what they're making at Maxim Brewery with, 1901.
Yeah.
Which is when the Peacock was built. So I'm like, there's something to follow here. And on the same night, we had our first private party upstairs. And we'd inherited that from the previous runners of the pub. It was just in their diary. We could have cancelled it, but it was like this couple were moving to Australia. And me, I did the catering for it by myself. And I learned a big lesson that day because I'm like, I was doing triple fried chicken wings, right? I was making quiche. I made Scotch eggs by hand, right, for a buffet.
Yeah. All the simple stuff.
I made a beef rendang, right? It took 12 hours, right? And I'm like, and they were like, oh my God, that food is amazing. I was doing like tofu, like deep fried tofu, and I put this spread on by myself. And it took us hours. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. But they loved it. But this group we had like 100 people upstairs. We had the match on. And we looked at the till. It was like, okay, this is like, if we could do this every day, it would be fantastic. But you can't do that. So we're trying to learn these lessons about how to make the most of the automatic business opportunity and then building it around into something else. You know, it's like a learning curve. And then beginning of February 2020, the Futureheads did 2 gigs in our venue. We were playing an acoustic set. It was great. You know, like we did, I think, a matinee and 2 nights, 3 gigs. It was class. And I remember in the gig, starting to hear people talking about this thing called COVID. And I'm like, don't like the sound of that. And then, you know, over the coming weeks of talking about this pandemic and lockdowns started to be mentioned. And then before I know it, the doors are closed and we're sitting in the living room waiting for Boris Johnson to come on the television to tell us what's going to happen with our lives. Yeah. Everyone was in the same boat. It was horrific.
But just whilst you were building up a head of steam, though.
Yeah. It was trying to find a way. We were nowhere near like there. Sometimes I feel like the pandemic kind of saved our business, the pub business, because it allowed us to kind of really think about how to make it work.
Yeah, stop, reset, regroup.
Yeah, and in that respect, we benefited from it, as awful as it was. But that's when I learned how to be a pub landlord, when it was closed. Because every 2 weeks I had to go in, and there was 2 approaches to your lines. You could either empty them, and I was thinking, bacteria, yeast, I don't know if I want empty lines. How long are they going to be closed? What's going to happen when we reopen? So what I was doing was I was circulating fresh water every 2 weeks into the lines to block them so no air could get in. And that's when I learned how to line clean, when there was no beer. But I had to pour away hundreds of pints of beer. And I had all these fridges full of bottles and they were going out of date. I'm like, So there's me sitting on the roof of the Peacock, and it was a glorious summer. That first summer,
it was. I remember.
So I'm like line cleaning, drinking bottles of double Maxim on the roof, thinking, "What's going on here?" You know what I mean? It was like it was so surreal.
It was.
The town was deathly quiet. Obviously, nothing open, but slowly but surely, as we all know, the world started to open again. There was this period where it was very surreal because you were allowed to go into pubs, but you weren't allowed to stand up in the bar. You weren't allowed to order at the bar, but you had to wear a mask if you were going to the toilet, and then you used to come back, take your mask off, then sit and chat. And then England got into the bloody final of that.
That's right.
So we were doing bookings for that. And we were by hook or by crook trying to make it work. So there's me setting up projector screens, putting paper on we didn't have any curtains. So I'm like up on a ladder, blocking out the sunlight. Yeah. And we were streaming the match, and it was Germany versus England. Yeah. We had upstairs and downstairs fully booked, right? And we're streaming it.
Wasn't it all like table service as well?
Aye, table
QR
service. Yeah. It was mad.
Extra stress on the.
Well, we didn't do the QR codes. I still don't understand how to do them, like, but we did. So there you go. I think England scored. Everyone, it was amazing. Then suddenly, buffering, spinning wheel of doom. England are playing Germany, right? I'm like, oh my God, it corrects itself. Yeah. I'm like, close call. And then suddenly, someone's on their phone going, England have just scored, and they hadn't scored on my screen yet because it was now too late. I'm like, and then the spin wheel of doom again. No. I'm like, this is a nightmare. So I went forward to try and to restart the computer or whatever, and kicked the bloody HDMI cable out of the projector, and it went black. Yeah. Everyone's thrown bloody. I'm surprised I didn't end up with glass on my head, to be honest with you. Right? Yeah. So I'm like, this is a nightmare. Yeah. And I thought, what about aerials? So I got my mate to come and install an aerial. And I'm like, this is amazing, this. Yeah. Aerials. Yeah. It stays in time. It's coming through the air. I'm like, this is much better than the air.
You know what? I thought you got to bring a mate in and then get him to stand on the roof with his arm out like that for about 2 days.
He installed an aerial. I'm like, this is magic, this. So the rest of the tournament, all good. England versus Italy. Yeah. Yeah. And we'll go in that morning, turn everything on, set the projector up, blah-de-blah, turn my coolers on. One of my coolers isn't working, not generating ice. So the way it works, right, you've got these things called remote coolers, which are basically ice banks, and all of the lines go into them, and it cools the beer. And there's also one line in between them all, which has circulating cold water into it. And if your beer's not cold, it's not so much that it doesn't taste good. It's called fobbing. It comes out as froth. Yeah. So you can't serve any. Yeah. You can't even serve a bad pint. You can't even. It's just a pint of froth. Like, you can't
Scotch,
get
what Scotch used to look like at the top.
Yeah. You can't. Yeah, but it's just the whole pint. Yeah. And you can't charge people for that. So there's the finals on. Me and my dad are down in the cellar, shoveling ice, all match. It was like working on some strange, it was like being
rather like a locomotive for coal. It was like
he's back in the crystal maze again, isn't he?
I'm like,
it's another level.
Me and my dad are just back and forth. Yeah. And then England is scoring, and it feels like the floor's going to cave in. I'm like, oh my God, this is what it's like, like running a pub. It's like,
Barry, are you going to do an album, Stories of a Landlord? You've got to do that, man. I mean, surely that's a cracker, man.
Well, I mean, it's really my wife that I have to give credit for making the pub successful, because after the pandemic, she came in as a manager and she put together a proper business operation. Yeah, we were like kind of fly by night, whatever, not really.
We'll keep the wheels turning.
Keep the creative doors.
No, it was just when me and Dan are running the pub, it was pretty chaotic, to be honest. Yeah. And then Cindy came in and she was doing the rota. We got an accountant.
Yeah. Barry got Saturday night off.
I know, that's one of the things. As long as the soundtrack's all right, I don't care. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
Well, exactly. I was like making playlists. And she's like, why is there just loads of loose pound money in the safe? Like, if you've not got a bank account and all that stuff, she made it into a proper business and built it. And then she brought her mum in, and my mother-in-law's an incredible cook. She comes from Venezuela, and she's a machine. She's obviously, we're not serving Venezuelan food, but she's an incredible professional in the kitchen. So we started to build this kind of, it's a boozer really, with a private hire upstairs, but we do have a food offer, and we make pastry, and we're serving pies, and we did we call it the Cuthbert Vaux, which is a steak and double maxim pie.
Oh, lovely.
And that was our first like
Sort of
breakthrough. We use shortcrust pastry. Yeah.
Is that your own concoction as well? Is that your own kind of recipe?
I think it was.
Okay. All right. Okay.
We had blue cheese in it at first, but it's like it doesn't really cook very well. It just kind of becomes greasy.
Yeah.
And we do like cheese and potato pie. We have a kind of rotation of pies.
The rotation of pies.
Sounds like another album, didn't it?
Do you know what I really want? Have you seen those Australian pies? Cheese, steak and cheese pies, where there's a big bit of cheese inside the pie.
Yes,
so when you
I've
cut
heard
it
of these
open,
before.
it all comes out.
In fact, actually, somebody commented on a Size podcast about these in Australia.
Yeah.
About these
Australians make good pies.
Australian pies.
Yeah.
I had a lovely one in New Zealand. Steak and oyster pie. That's a real old-fashioned, like Victorian.
I love an oyster as
It's
well.
fantastic with steak.
So
It's beautiful.
we
We do smash burgers. We do a Sunday dinner offer. We make the gravy in the oven. Roast gravy, and it's like slow cooked beef. We do gammon, butter, roasted turkey crown, and we build it up. You know, the food offer for us, it's really important. We do food in the pub because it gives us a certain atmosphere.
Yeah.
It's not about. I wouldn't, if I'm honest, I wouldn't want to run a restaurant because it's difficult without wanting to be too boring. But it's because of VAT. So if you buy an onion, you don't pay VAT. But if you make an onion soup, you have to pay VAT. So everything, every bit of food you sell,
It's killing the industry.
It's really difficult to see a way out of that, to be honest, because you can't just remove VAT. Because everyone will be expected to put their prices down, and then it'll be the same situation.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the answer to that is.
Yeah.
Some kind of VAT relief.
Boy, I want to kind of shift it a little bit. I want to talk about because of the community, your community based, all of this stuff is heavily influenced by community. As you can see, we have a Davy lamp on the shelf.
Yeah.
I really want to talk about this mining album that
thank you very much.
done, because
You read my mind.
We've both been listening to it.
We've both been listening to it, and because my dad hit and he actually died on this site in Weymouth. So
What
it's quite
no way
poignant.
in a mining?
Yeah, in a mine, like down the road here.
Oh wow!
How long ago was
These
that,
are from his 93. So when he was a year younger than me, he died in the mine, which is on the left hand side of where we are now. So and my granddad worked in the mine as well.
Right.
But these were engineers working in mine. So I wanted to talk to you about the influence of the mine and the mining community in the album as well.
Yeah.
The fact is that I've never had a chance to talk to anybody. You just hear these stories. When he worked down the pit, you know, I've heard stories about him running out of a mine in India because he traveled around the world when the ceilings were collapsing, and then he died down the road. When you think all the health and safety is a lot better, but it was negligence and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So it's kind of close to me. So I wanted to hear your story and why and the reasons around the mining album as well.
Well, I mean, we were talking earlier on about my commissions that I've done, you know, like, and I've been lucky to do them, and I've done all sorts, you know, like I did Sunderland, the city went for like the cultural City of Culture Awards.
Yeah.
And there was this big campaign. I wrote like a theme for it, and I did like something for the tall ships, and met this guy called Paul Emerson, who's actually American, based in Washington DC, and there's a big cultural partnership between Washington DC and Sunderland because of the Washington family. And these commissions that I was getting through Paul and the Sunderland Council were like really interesting and kind of meaty, you know, big projects. You know, I had to perform, like do a 30-minute performance and with an ensemble and dancers. It was like really like challenging. Yeah. And he got in touch about maybe like possibly doing another commission, an album. And the only kind of brief was that it should be linked to the coal mining culture of the Northeast. And that was kind of it. That was all that was said. And I immediately took it on because I need a reason to make an album. I'm not one of these people who could. I used to be able to just sit and write music for no reason, but now I feel like I need the pressure of it being a failure in order to motivate me to even begin.
Yeah.
Or like suddenly it's like, okay, an album, that's a lot of work. Maybe it's 300 hours of writing, 300 hours of recording, maybe. You know, that's the type of project I can get into. You know what I mean? So I went about, you know, planning how I'd actually make this album and what the subject matter was going to be. Obviously, I knew I wasn't going to write a load of lyrics about being a miner because I've never done that. I was a paper boy. I could write an album about that, but like, I'm not going to try and pretend I truly understand the culture of mining. Yeah. So I started to search for resources, you know, research. And I found a couple of great books, 3. One of them is called Pitmatic. It's a book about the language of the mines. Yeah. Things like Mara. That's a Collier word for friend, you know. Wheezy when he's had a wesh. And I found this great book called Come All Ye Bold Miners, which was a collection of songs, but not written out in music form, just basically lyrics put together by someone called A.L. Lloyd. And it had this, I opened it, I was reading through it. It wasn't just songs about mining, you know, it was like songs about living in the world of a miner. It wasn't just
the
about
extended
pickaxes.
sort of reality. It
No,
wasn't
it was
just
like, there was like love songs in there. There's songs about unionization. There's songs about danger. There's songs about the greatness of it, the community. Do you know what I mean? So like I started to think, these are fantastic lyrics. So what am I going to do? How am I going to basically make this my project? It's like, well, I'm going to rewrite these songs or just, you know, create entirely new music around these lyrics. And that became the path I chose. And I was speaking to a friend of mine who I have to mention whenever I talk about this album, Keith Gregson, who's a local retired history teacher, and he's a friend of mine. And he did an article for Ancestry magazine about my ancestors because I mentioned to him that in our family, when I was a kid, I was told that my great-great-granda was a lion tamer, right?
I'm laughing, but it might be true. I don't know yet.
Right? Because the Newsomes, right, they ran Shields Fair. And when my mum was a little girl, she used to make candy floss. My nana, Susie, used to make candy floss. So there's a link to that world. Yeah. And we were told that the Newsomes were a prominent circus family, and it's true. And my great uncle was a lion tamer, and he was killed by a lion, right? But you might think he was killed in a kind of...
That's probably the most incredible thing I've ever heard.
Listen.
But he didn't end up taming the lion because the lion got him.
No, he was in his 70s.
Really?
Yeah, and he died actually from his injuries. He wasn't eaten by a lion, but he died after being attacked by a lion. But his body was covered in scars because he'd been a lion tamer.
Yeah, part of the job.
And apparently the lion's stuffed in a museum in Leeds, or in Yorkshire somewhere, right? But his brother was... an equestrian master. He had hippodromes, right? And I told my mate Keith about this thing we'd heard about our family, and he went and researched it and found out it was true. But he also found out that he's been doing it again, actually. And what on my dad's side, this is like kind of mad. The one side of the family, they were border raiders, bandits.
I think like Reavers, sort of.
Yeah, Reavers. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they were Reavers. Yeah, and
what a juxtaposition.
But then on one side, we've got these people, this family coming from Cork, and they moved to Jarrah, and they were the McGurks. They were the McGurks, and they were all boxers.
What? All right, okay.
Eddie McGurk, one of the sons, was my granda.
There's no Norman, is there? Is there right. I went to school with a daughter.
Right.
So I went to St. Oswald's School,
right,
which is just on the fault line between Heaven and Jarrow.
Yeah.
McGurk, Lindsay McGurk.
Yeah, the McGurks were a prominent, well, still are. They're all through there. Yeah, boxers, and then he also found out that two of my ancestors were killed in the Trimdon Grange explosion in 1882. And one of them was 12 and one of them was 15. And this was as I'm embarking on making this album. And then I found a song by Tommy Armstrong, the Pitman's poet, about the disaster. And this is a secret track on the album that's coming out next week. And I couldn't sing it, like, I couldn't finish it. I recorded it in Birdland Studios, which is above the Peacock. And I was doing it alone because I decided to self-produce the album for two reasons. For the challenge of learning how to really, hopefully, to try and make a good go of doing professional level recordings. And also, so I didn't have to rely on other people's timetables. Do you know what I mean? So it's like I could go in whenever I could without needing an engineer.
And are you layering all the instruments on the track as well?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. There was a few other musicians on it. My brother plays on it, a bit of drums. Dave Brewis played drums. And I got a great bass player on one tune called Last Dance at the Landlord's Ball. Yeah. He'd recorded that from Berlin, actually, just in his house, sent it over. But I found this song, the Trimdon Grange explosion. I couldn't finish it because of this line. And it's about looking after the orphans and making sure they never cry for bread. And I just felt like this kind of line, I couldn't sing it because I kept on breaking up because the simplicity of bread, but what it represents, nourishment. It's the most kind of basic form of nourishment, but it has to be made. So it's like the community aspect of the world of the collier is something that we don't have now. Yeah. And I think we're lacking because of that. But the idea that when there was something like that, maybe the community would come together, because suddenly there might be a lot of orphans in the village, but suddenly they'll be looked after. And I thought that was just so beautiful.
There's something very symbolic and iconic about bread, though, isn't there?
Well, of course it is.
Project, but the whole companion is, breaking bread.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it was just like such a humble but moving and profound thing. And suddenly I'm like really into this, because sometimes it's difficult to get into a commission. You know what I mean? Because you've got to like put a hat on and it doesn't always become like a really embodied artistic project, but you've got to deliver it. It's like, you're writing to order, but this became like, because also there was no real kind of strict time frame on it. I had enough time to kind of digest what the challenges of the project were and then put it into form. And there was loads of sessions I came away with nothing, or I did tracks that I just kind of binned because they weren't right. So the process took a while and was over a summer, but like kind of scattered whenever I could, a couple of days a week. And eventually, finished it. And to honour it, I did a gig, which is almost like a preview gig at Pop Rex. And I had a great band, my brother and the Brewis brothers, and we did a 4-piece band called the Band of Brothers. And we played the album and a few songs from my first solo album, Malady, which is my kind of chronicle of my struggles with mental health, which I released in, I think, 2016. And subsequently finished the album. And it's coming out next week, and it hasn't been announced yet, but I'm going to do a really special gig in the Northeast in summertime, which is going to be incredible.
Okay.
Yeah. Like to hear
which is linked to coal mining, let's just put it that way.
I'm just fascinated by that emotion, because, when you're being given something to do, you go, right, okay, let's embed myself into this community and find out what it's all about. But then you put yourself in it, and then that's when the special comes out. That's when when you find something which connects to you. Yeah. And I think then you find the whole purpose and the lyrics. Does that just come together when you've done that? You embed yourself in it.
I think you have to just dive in to a creative project, but sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes there's not enough depth really there. You're kind of searching for it, but with something like this, I suppose that the possibilities or the potential for that is kind of endless, because you're talking about civilization. It's not just a job. Yeah. It's like an entire culture around everything to do with the day-to-day life is embedded in there. So I was finding Keith actually put together a book of coal mining songs with a retired miner from Seaham called Jim Morland. And he gave me a copy of this book, and I found this song written by Jim Morland called What Happened to the Ponies? Mm-hmm. And it's like, it seems like a whimsical song because it's about ponies, but, you know, it's like this idea that these creatures lived in the darkness and they became blind.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they were only allowed out for like a day a year. Mm-hmm. And they lived in the darkness and they had the sixth sense. So on the album, when it comes out, there's a track called The Endless Ropes, which is actually speech of Jim Morland. He got interviewed on the radio and Keith gives it, and I've created this kind of ambient piece. He's talking about how sometimes you're trying to get your pony out and it would just stop. And you couldn't move it with 10 massive gadgets. It's just there. And then 5 minutes later, there's a collapse because they built up this sixth sense.
Right.
And they knew.
Yeah.
And then obviously, when they got to a certain age, they used to turn them into glue and send them to the knackers yard en masse. And it's just like that kind of brutality around it. But the idea of like the hierarchy, the political hierarchy of mines, like obviously mines used to be owned exclusively by the church in the medieval times. Like with tin mines and whatnot, it was the church. They owned all the land. Yeah. And if you were living on their land, you that was your job. Like,
yeah,
it wasn't like you weren't paid either.
Yeah.
It was slavery.
Yeah.
It came from that. Obviously, eventually, it was a paid job, but for the most part, actually, it was men, women, and children were working as slaves. In order to have their keep.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So, like, that was just the life.
Yeah.
So it's like this kind of the heritage is fascinating.
If you ever get a chance, you meant Pitmen Poets. Have you come across them before?
No.
You ever get a chance? I went to see them at Sage last year.
Oh, was this an ensemble?
Yeah.
Oh, right. And they singing songs by Tommy Armstrong, or was it?
They were. It was I can't actually remember off the top of my head, but the amount of depth and storytelling.
Yeah.
And the expansive history they seem to go through.
Yeah.
In about 6 or 7 tracks.
Yeah.
Everything that you just said there resonates. It comes across in their songs.
It's hard
really
to
powerful.
imagine that way back when. I remember being when I was a little boy in the 80s. I don't recall ever seeing any miners or anything like that, but I do remember seeing authentic culture in Sunderland City Centre and smelling the Vaux Brewery.
Yeah.
Well, I said this to you because the mining community it's not close, because I'm from a shipyard town. So very similar values and similar issues, but slightly different sort of lens on life, I think.
I've got pictures because I go to my mom's house and there's pictures on the wall. He travelled around and he's next to this massive drill which he used to engineer, which goes through the mine to cut all the coal out. And he's next. It's just that white vest on helmet. Everything's kind of just muddy and dirty.
Yeah.
He always had like mud under the fingernails, and there was always like something almost nearly missing on him all the time. But he was a very talented commercial artist. So in the same room, you've got these beautiful line-drawn pictures of artistry. And he wanted to be a commercial artist, but my grandparents couldn't afford to send him to college. So therefore, he went down the pit and made the best of that. But that's what got him in the end. It's sort of, it is a sad kind of, when you look back on it, And
oh, yeah, of course.
But me and my brother, we ended up going into creativity and doing the art and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of, we carry this on. Because he never got a chance to do that.
Well, engineers are some of the most creative people around, aren't they?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're creating, they're not creating art, but they're creating things that make more of an impact than art, actually.
Yeah.
It's funny you just mentioned that you can remember the smell of Vaux. I mean, because I remember
Well, you lived in Glasgow.
I lived in Glasgow.
Can you remember smelling Morton's Bakery?
Yeah, well, I was only in Glasgow for 5 years.
Well, I lived in
2001 to 2006, I think I was there.
Well, I lived near their bakery, Morton's.
Right,
you know the Morton's rolls that you get
with
the square sausage and
I still love square sausage now.
Oh, it's delicious, right?
Oh.
Lawn sausage. It's really nice.
Potatoes gone.
Fantastic. Brown sauce.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, but the smell coming out of the brewery was I was like, it took us back to the town on a Saturday.
Yeah.
And it was this smell. Mm-hmm. It was like a big wet dog. it was like what's that? It was like thick. It was like
the hops, isn't it?
Yeah, it was like.
But if you went to Newcastle, though, what I remember, right? You know, growing up in Hebburn, going to Newcastle was like a day out.
Oh yeah,
right? On the metro.
Oh yeah.
Go to Geordie Jeans.
Yeah.
Right?
We had a Geordie Jeans.
Peppy Keyring.
Yeah, you were
Blanford
get
Street.
Peppy Keyring. But the smell everywhere smelled of Weetabix. Everywhere. And it just
That's a good
just
doggy, like,
penetrated
isn't it?
everything.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose every city had like city-based breweries.
Yeah.
Once upon a time.
It's there. It's where the Vaux, the pub used to be, because we used to start there and then go into town.
The brewery tap.
Yeah.
Right.
But you used to smell that.
Yeah.
It was like really evocative and
Well, it sticks
lovely.
with you. Yeah, it takes me right back.
So
when I
one
think of that.
morning I came out my flat in Glasgow and I was like, just like went back in time to being a little boy,
Yeah.
Going to like Carrick's Bakery.
Which part of Glasgow were you in?
Hindland.
All right, okay.
Novar Drive I lived on.
Right.
In one of the tenements.
Oh, amazing
Yeah.
places.
Yeah, it was great. It's in a fantastic city.
I lived right next to the art school in the West End.
Oh, wow.
Loved it. It was a bit train spotting for a while. I lived next to the. So you know the pub on Train Spotting, where he does the Begbie pint robberies. That was my local.
Is it?
Called Crosslands.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the way up to Partick.
At one point I used to knock about in the West End and Dumbarton Road.
Yeah.
And there was a pub in there. I can't remember what it was called, which is a shame, but they had hand-raised pork pies on the bar.
Yeah.
Not for free, obviously, but that's a thing. Hand-raised pork pies with hot water pastry. Like, I really want to introduce them to the Peacock, but it's so time-consuming.
Yeah.
But that's a real delicacy of the boozer, to have a pint and a plate with half a Scotch, with a knife, some mustard, and a handmade pork pie. I mean, that's like
it's the holy grail.
That is the most luxurious thing you could ever have. Like,
you got me wanting to talk about pubs in Glasgow now. Some cracking pubs in Glasgow.
Oh yeah, great curry houses. Yeah.
Arlington was one of my favourite pubs.
Oh
the
yeah,
most
I know it.
spit and sawdust place. Like honestly, best pint of Guinness you could ever have, but it would fit about 20 people in. Every night was full of musicians just playing.
Yeah.
I
remember that
think
place.
about a Barry Hyde life experience tasting menu. I think there's quite a lot of colour in that.
Yeah. Well, lap.
Yeah. Don't. Honestly, lap. You got us talking before.
I roasted some recently, but braised and then kind of roasted it.
Yeah.
Did not go down well with my wife.
No?
Too fatty.
Really?
Yeah.
It's no such thing.
I love the fat.
I do as well.
So what's your favourite thing to eat now? We'll get into the food thing. What's your go-to?
Well, I cook pretty much every night. But what frustrates me at the minute, if I may say, is that because I've got 3 kids, and some nights I'm making 3 different meals.
Yeah, me too. Right.
And it's like, it's so difficult, especially when you make 3 meals and then they don't eat any of them.
Oh, but soul destroying, Barry.
I like, I don't know. You can't beat the nicely cooked steak with butter.
Yeah.
Some kind of compound butter.
Yeah.
It's delicious.
It is.
Yeah.
I like steak with hash browns, actually. Above like mash or anything else. Hash browns, steak, fried egg, and compound butter.
Fried egg.
Actually.
Fried egg.
Yeah. Okay. It's usually fried egg with a gammon, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's
but I can't resist gammon with fried egg, and I have to have pineapple.
Do you?
Oh, you go on pineapple.
I've got contentious.
That was the only thing left on the side of the plate, Barry. The pineapple. No one eats the pineapple. You eat the pineapple.
No, you see, I've got a family of Hawaiian pizzas apart from me. I can't stand it.
Are you a Hawaiian pizza guy?
Yeah, but you can't get good ham on a pizza these days. It's this crap. It's just like, what is it? It's like almost like Savoy. Yeah. You can't get good ham.
You see, it brought me back now.
I like
the
Savoy.
point that I raised earlier.
Savoy.
So when you mentioned, so there was a connect that I was reading about only a couple of days ago. So you mentioned Franz Ferdinand. I remember years ago, I thought there's definitely this connection between food and music. But Alex Capranos, he put a book out, didn't he?
We grew up in Shields, didn't we?
Yeah. So that the first chapter of his book, right? I think his book's called like Sound Bites or something.
No, he did.
When he's on
It
tour.
was published, yeah.
And the first chapter is about, because he had family in Berwick.
Right.
And he used to come to Shields because he had family here, go on holiday. And he writes a whole chapter about Savoys.
Savoys.
Yeah.
Well, Savoy's French. Do you know that? Savoy, French.
Is it?
Made with pig's brains and all kinds of original.
Yeah, brains.
Yeah.
And it's in Food Glorious Food.
Yeah.
Yeah. Peas pudding and saveloy.
We were going to do we had an idea a few years ago about doing a podcast where we explore original recipes, and we were thinking about let's make a true saveloy, but it's all brawn and pig brains and all kinds of stuff.
The Mackham cookbook was fantastic. We did a few recipes, but we do panaggaldi now and then anyway. It's part of we do like a panaggaldi pot pie, but we were serving. Panaggaldi was not something I ever had as a kid because I don't think it was a Shields thing. Well, my nana never used to make it. Aye.
Yeah.
Some kind of like mutant casserole. Maybe.
Right. Please take note of that. Mutant casserole.
Not in a kind of radioactive way, but like, corned beef, sausage.
I've heard people put black pudding in.
It just melts.
Panaggaldi to me is just, it's onion, sliced potatoes, corned beef. That's it. But I had other people saying, put black pudding in.
You used to have like, corned beef hot pot, but there was sometimes liver in that. When was the last? Does any of your kids ever had liver before or not?
No, but my son loves black pudding. Like,
does he?
He does. Yeah. If I'm cooking it, he wakes up. It's like, I can smell black pudding.
Yeah, I mean,
straight down. You could eat like 4.
Yeah, easy.
He's only 6.
Yeah, when I lived in London, I nearly turned a vegetarian onto the smell of bacon. Because a bacon sandwich every Sunday morning, he's like, I could easily tuck into that. I'm like,
that happened to me.
Everybody loves bacon. So
I went veggie for a while and it was a bacon sandwich.
It's a bacon sandwich that's going to break you, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've heard that a lot.
Bacon brought us back.
Right. Well, I got into casserole. Bacon
we were talking about, because last week I was down in Helmsley and I sent you a picture of just slices of tongue because I love just...
Ate about 50 duck tongues
50?
in Chinatown in Birmingham.
Yeah. Right, okay. Was it like that was fully formed duck tongue? Because my experience,
they look almost like cockles.
Yeah, did it come in like a little cockle tub as well? Like one of those.
It was a bowl. I went through this phase where if there was anything outlandish, I had to order it. Like even like eating like
exactly the same.
Pig's ear terrine in Moscow. That was rough.
I had duck's tongues in China.
Wow.
Right. So I was in Chengdu and I was just thinking, it's duck's tongues. It's going to be like pork, be like pork rattling or something. No.
They're quite small.
It was the foot, but in China, it was the full thing.
Was it?
Like how do you call them? Dangly bits. It was like a full, 6-inch long gizzard. It was the full thing, as if it had just been pulled out like that.
That's rough.
Cooked on a plate. Yeah. And then chicken's feet. You always assume chicken's feet are going to be like pork, like crunchy.
No, they're gelatinous. They're great for making stock, though.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
It's the best. Apart from like veal bones and that, but you can't really get them.
Yeah.
The strangest thing I've ever eaten probably is we were touring, we went to Mexico to support Iggy Pop and the Stooges. And it was a funny trip because it was outside of one of the football stadiums that set up like a festival ground, and we were very excited to go and play with the Stooges, and long flight, gnarly journey to get there. Arrived quite late at night, went out, we're all starving, found a restaurant, just like the nearest restaurant, and I was on the menu, looking at the menu. It's like I have to order this, even though it sounds crazy, and I ate.
What, the first meal you
this is the first thing I ate. Me and my brother ate it. It was
roll the dice,
got to roll the dice.
It was ants' eggs.
Ants' eggs.
Ants' eggs.
Yeah, like about 300 of them, and it was served with tacos. And by the end, some of them were hatching. And I was
Isn't that famous though? That's a heritage dish. That was really chef's table.
It was really lovely.
Yeah.
But I was just like I could not order just like a bit of chicken. You know what I mean? I just couldn't do it. Like I was like eating like pig's colon and shark.
Where do you think that comes from? So I'm exactly the same. If I go somewhere,
it's because of Fergus Henderson.
Yes.
And nose to tail eating. Like that whole thing, like reading that and roast chicken, another story, like really getting into food via literature and Anthony Bourdain and all of that, like this kind of food adventure.
Yeah.
So you feel you need to have that adventure everywhere you go. That's top of your list. I
want to
be
eat
adventurous.
it all.
Yeah.
But now I'm like,
what's your biggest? So have you ever had a challenge where you've went, actually, no,
on the fence. I've ordered the wrong thing.
I don't think so.
Really?
I think I've cleared pretty much every plate I've ever had in front of us.
So
I love it.
If I'm honest.
So nothing puts you off. No textures or anything like that. That was a textures thing.
I mean, I don't think I'd try that that fermented fish thing.
There's
the
duck egg as well.
A friend of mine, he went and tried that recently.
Well, you mean
gagging in the restaurant?
But you're talking about balut.
Have you had that?
Where I don't know if I couldn't eat balut. Where it's like got the chicken. The chick.
It's almost like it's
like I don't know
you're
if I
talking
could.
The fermented fish, where it's like it makes famously makes
and the
people
tin's
gag.
basically growing because of the
noxious
gas.
Yeah.
I couldn't do that.
Oh my word!
I wouldn't want to do that.
I mean, there's a
sure,
TV series of that, Barry.
But when it opens, it squirts everywhere, and then it's all over your face. Like horrific.
I tell you what, if we're going to put any food competitions on, Barry's number one in here. What about chili? What about chili? Are you a hot sauce man or not?
I like hot sauce, but I don't want to regret it. I've had I feel like this whole ghost chili stuff. It's a bit mental.
Yeah.
At one point, I suppose I was eating quite spicy stuff, but I don't go out of my way to do that.
Okay.
We're getting older now, man. It's not worth it, is it?
I don't know, mate. Ansex is a push, mate.
No, seriously, go watch it on Chef's Table.
Yeah. It was
a Mexican chef cooks these heritage dishes, and one of them is
you'd be barely pushing me for caviar.
I'll bring him next week, man.
In Mexico City, when you're walking around, you see bands walking around with little bags full of sugared, worms and it's like.
Well, honestly, I've told you about my jellyfish story, but in China, you go into not so much in Shanghai, but if you go into sort of west, go inland. Check my geography there. You literally see you go to these night markets. It'll look like the Granger Market or Jackie White's.
Yeah,
glass fronted. It'll be like a sparrow on a stick.
Yeah,
but nothing. Yeah. It's not hidden. You'll just see a stick with wings sticking out of it. This thing. Yeah. Honestly, this. Seriously, there's some things. That's where, because I was really
that's a starter.
I've got no. That's a starter.
You need 15 for a main course.
A wing stack.
There's something quite brutal about it all, really. I remember when, me eldest daughter was a bairn, and Milena, me eldest, she's kind of like a bit of a natural vegetarian, she doesn't really like meat. She never has.
Yeah.
She likes some, but she's always had a bit of an issue with it, because of the fact it's animals, And I've been vegetarian before and stuff like that. And, trying to explain to her, Mary had a little lamb. She's like, "Do we eat lambs?" It's like, yeah, but only on a special occasion. It's like, you know what I mean? It's kind of brutal, gruesome, what human beings are. We're very extreme kind of creatures. We kind of devour the world. That's part of our nature.
But I guess that's why I've always. You talk about Fergus Henderson, nose to tail stuff. That's why I've always been really quite with my kids. I'm quite explicit about that stuff, right? So when they were growing up, that's what the liver thing. I remember going into the market once and getting a load of ox hearts. Right?
Oh yeah,
but then making a bolognese with it, and not telling the kids, and just be like, "See how they respond."
How did that go?
I thought, all right. It was all right. It was. I mean, they detected it straight away. It's like my son hates mushrooms.
Yeah.
Try and hide them in there. You'll just hold on a minute. Something not quite the same about this.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't push it away. They had it, and they tried it.
But the thing is, because you made it with something else before, it was a brand new thing.
But it's because I've got this thing about the brutality. So if you're gonna eat meat, in my view, you kind of need to eat meat, and be aware of the nose to tail consequences of it all, and kind of, if you're gonna take it, use it all.
Yeah.
Do something with every single bit of it.
Yeah.
Which is what they do in most of the world.
Gizzards.
Yeah. Okay, Barry, on that note, let's jump to the menu. We're on the food thing. So if you pick two and then your Greg's order, please. We keep saying pick three and then Greg's order, which is in there, but we'll keep confusing the hell out of people. So We've already talked about the Savoy, so let's go for something else. So any two off there.
Interpret it the way you want.
What, two starters? No,
not anything on that menu. Pick something, but two, and then we'll do a Greg's
Could be a
order
memory
on top
topic
of that.
conversation, whatever.
Just you shout them out. We know what they are.
Well, in India, they're called curry gravy, don't they?
Yes, they do.
Well, okay, curry versus gravy.
Curry versus gravy. Right, okay, so this is a chip-based question. Okay.
Chips. Okay.
On your chips, what you having?
It's been contentious, this one.
Are you having curry or are you having gravy?
I remember when we were kids, we used to go to the Metro Centre and there was this Chinese takeaway in the bus station at the Metro Centre.
Yeah.
And they had curry sauce in there, right? Mm-hmm. And it was spicy.
Yeah.
But it was full of pepper, not chili. And quite often curry sauce is disappointing.
Right.
Because it's not enough flavour.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's like there's no levels of flavour. It's just some kind of like basic curry.
Yeah. It's like an army green colour.
I like curry with fish and chips.
Okay.
Because I think fish and curry is very complementary.
Mm-hmm.
I always get a tub of curry if I'm getting fish and chips.
Got to do it. I'm gonna go for curry.
You're going on the curry front.
The best. My son loves curry and chips, and I take him to different fish and chip shops, and the best Coleman's curry sauce is delicious.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's really, really good. It's his favourite.
Salt and vinegar on?
Oh yeah. Well, it's got to be done there though.
I think that's key. It's like no messing about. It
bewilders me that people don't ask for it to be. If you're getting fish and chips, to take away, you've got to put it on before it gets wrapped.
No fiddling about with it, kind of little dusting like that.
My daughter Nico loves vinegary fish and chips.
Yeah,
but fish bites.
Okay,
and sausage.
Yeah.
Are you having butter on there as well?
It has to be done.
Aye.
When I lived in Glasgow, I asked for butter.
Really assertively, by the way.
But they were like, "What? You want scraps?" I'm like, "Aye," and I'm like, "Hold on a minute, you're selling deep fried pizza in here.
Yeah.
Why can't I have butter?"
Aye. That's the thing. It's a butter and scraps. I mentioned butter, but some people do scraps. So yeah, it's what
we used to have curry batter bun from this little shop on Eden Vale, but it wasn't a battered bun. Yeah. It was like a bun with butter, batter, curry, and then the bun on top. So you basically eating a batter sandwich.
So Barry, we had a previous episode on this podcast where I've got a friend of mine who ruined my whole design GCSE, right? Because we went out for a pint. Robin Hood and Jarrow, right, was like one of my early illegal pints. Did karaoke and that there, so we went out for a night out. 70 years old, right? Head back to the batter box. It was called curried battered bun.
Delicious.
He just chucked up all of me project, didn't he? Because it was like so full of grease and fat.
Right. Oh dear.
Battered bun. You're the only person I've met.
Nobody else has mentioned battered bun. Aye.
The bun itself wasn't battered. I know you can get that, but it was like basically a crunchy. Yeah. But
okay. Nice.
Greg's order.
Well, let's do that last. Pick another one on there.
Any of them.
Anything you want.
Well, the
trigger memory. Yeah.
Well, Savoy.
Come on then.
All right. Okay.
It has to be skin on for me. It has to be skin on.
It's a bit more of my pocket meat to Savoy now and again.
But we're talking about because that's single Savoy. Let's go into Savoy dip.
No, it's got to be skin on in the dip.
Yeah, I'm the same.
The dip. Yeah.
When I was a kid, right, if I was ever off school, when I was of an age where I could be left in the house by myself, regularly, my mum used to bring us a Savoy dip back.
Yeah.
When I was off.
Everything on.
Yeah.
Paste
everything
pudding,
on.
Dipped. Yeah.
Mustard. But for me, it was like a reason to pretend to be ill.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you know what it is?
Sometimes she used to bring us two.
Oh man. Yeah.
Which is difficult to eat when you got tonsillitis, but I did manage.
Yeah.
Do you know what it is?
Was she not testing you there? If I get him,
it was too late. It was already the afternoon. They were also going to send us to school for like 10 minutes.
But if he eats it, you're going back tomorrow.
Well, that's why you got to be ill on Friday.
This is a semi-serious.
He's got it all worked out, right?
Yeah, that's totally semi-serious, but quite funny comment, right? Because she gets thrown under the bus every episode. Me mum.
Oh, Norma,
right? Me mum during lockdown. I'll never forget this comment. So my mum had COVID, right? It was a horrible time. She lives on her own,
right?
So really poorly. And I remember taking the dog for a walk. I was ringing in to check how she was, see how she was. Do you need anything? She's sitting at home. She's cold. Radiators had gone off and all this sort of stuff. It's really, really tragic situation. It was horrible. And then she was quite upset on the phone, but she sort of distilled it down to, son, I've tried everything. I even tried to have a Savoy dip, and I couldn't even eat that. How to bring COVID into short focus. I couldn't even eat a Savoy dip.
I could just imagine.
That is bad.
She's in the house by herself, and she's saving that just to last.
Yeah.
She knows if she can't get through the Savoy,
one of those domes like that.
It just glows. It's kind of one of them things. I have to try the Savoy. If I can get through the Savoy, I'm all right.
Yeah,
all right.
She didn't get through the Savoy.
That's
it.
And she's like,
it's a lovely thing.
Yeah,
but I agree. Skin on every time. It robs it of flavour.
Extra texture.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It's too soft.
Yeah.
I chuck onions on mine.
Greg's order.
What's your Greg's order?
Corned beef. They call them bakes.
Corned beef bakes now.
It's a corned beef pasty, isn't it? Really?
I think so.
Yeah.
I remember when sausage rolls used to be 10 pence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm sure pasties used to be 20 pence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, steak bakes, chicken bakes, that's a bake. They're not pasties.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But corned beef and potato, that's a pasty.
As long as the ratio is right, potato and corned beef.
I think it's pretty good these days.
Yeah.
I'm not keen on their so-called festive bake. I don't want sand on me pasty. It's like, who thought of that? It's like, I don't want a crunchy pasty.
Ah.
I don't mind a bit of texture, but like...
They should just have
Merry
like a sort of
Christmas.
protected heritage range, shouldn't they? Corned beef, cheese.
They don't do Cornish pasties anymore, do they?
Well, they had to stop, didn't they? Because now they're called vegetable, because the whole IP thing over Cornish pasties.
Because the Cornish pasties were all shaped differently, weren't they? It was like a dome, wasn't it? With that was a Cornish pasty. So you go on in, you're ordering a corned beef. Anything to drink?
Probably it's just something generic. Coke Zero.
So you're having a cold drink? Because I've got a thing about hot food and hot drinks. I'm always a hot food, cold drink. So I can't have a cup of tea with a meal. I have to have a cold drink.
You could only have a cup of tea with a salad.
No, I'd have a cup of tea with you'd have a cup of tea with a biscuit or something like that. Do you know? But you're not having a cup of tea.
You have a cup of tea with fish and chips.
You're not going to tuck into your Sunday dinner and have a mug of tea on the side, are you?
You know what? I'm with you on that. Like,
yeah.
Because having a cup of tea with fish and chips, that seems to be quite an old-fashioned thing. But I don't know if I could do it.
You have a mug of tea after, don't you, with a biscuit? You don't have it with the meal. But it's a hot and cold thing as well. So
I could have coffee with breakfast.
Coffee with breakfast, but like a bacon sandwich and a coffee.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm into that.
Okay. All right.
Do you have a bacon sandwich like? Fanta.
Iron brew.
Fanta and a bacon. See, again, you're not putting a Fanta with a bacon sandwich, do you know what I mean? At all.
If I took a bacon sandwich pairing, what would you have
I'll
with
have a
it?
duck sandwich and a Fanta or duck. Do you know what I mean? Is that what you're talking about? You're trying to mix them.
It's too gastronomic.
Well, that's it. You get a bit too deep there.
Gastronomic pairing.
Okay. Do you remember Peter's, the bakery?
I do. The Cathedral Bakers. About Moore's Pies.
Moore's Pies.
Remember them?
I don't.
Moore's Pies. They're fantastic. Pallion, I think that it comes from.
Okay.
But they had one in the Bridges, and their steak pies were heavenly.
Is that your favourite pie you've ever had?
Steak. Yeah, I mean, in terms of like on the high street.
On the high street.
They were great.
Yeah.
Moore's, MAWS.
Yeah.
Bit more expensive than Greg's. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they had a lovely glaze on the pastry, and they were always very well filled and very kind of well seasoned. But pastry is a commodity that is very powerful. It's almost like a drug. You know what I mean? Like if you get pastry right,
everything in lyrics.
I'm just imagining. I know it's kind of. I can just see it now.
Pastry's a commodity.
Drug-like qualities when done right. It's kind of like
It does.
You just go into a trance. You're like
Pastry trance.
you can get lost in pastry. Like
honestly, Barry, I'm going to end on
It's
lost
been
in
awesome.
pastry. That's fantastic. It's been great. Thanks for coming in as well.
my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
Much appreciated.
No, really enjoyed it.
Cheers.
It can go anywhere, as it does.
Oh, we ended up somewhere,
Yeah.
but that's all right. We landed the ship. It's fine.
Shall we get what?
We got the Polaroid to do.